Hey, this is Andre Koen. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. We want to talk a little bit about this notion of what it means to be an effective mediator to help navigate people through conflict. And so let's get into that. But before we get too far, what I would like to do is just kind of talk a little bit about our ground rules, right, and our agreements. So ultimately, what we want you to do as a mediator, as we engage in this conversation, is really think about your focus your attention on being goal effective, right? So a lot of times people get caught up in conversations that are polarizing around what it means to be good, what it means to be bad, and all of those things. And we like to suggest to you that that is actually just a counterproductive way of engaging, and that is actually not helpful in terms of how we want to think about what it means to be effective, right? So we want to really focus on this goal achievement, this goal accomplishments. The next thing we want to focus on is this notion that we're aligning our thoughts and our behaviors with our values. So we keep those things in alignment, that we engage in curiosity, not judgment. We know that judgment is problematic because what it says is that I will not be surprised. I am not surprised by life. I already know how things are going to go. I already have those things figured out. And so problem solving and discovery can't happen when folks have this kind of judgmental mindset. And then offer others what you need. So if you need compassion, be compassionate. If you need respect, be respectful. If you need silence. All right, so you see where I'm going with that, because when we offer what we need, that's how we model for others what that means, right? What that looks like. When we model those things, that's when we're able to kind of go after what it is that we need. And then lastly, give the grace that you that has been given you, right? So give grace. And so what is grace? Grace is the recognition that you haven't always been where you are today, right? It's the recognition that someone gave you space to learn and grow in significant ways. And so that's how you've gotten to where you are today, through grace, right? So give people grace. And to be quite honest, in terms of ground rules, I only have one ground rule, and that is treat people the way they want to be treated. So tucked in that ground rule is this notion that I have to understand how people want to be treated. So I have to commune with them. I have to have conversations and connect and talk and understand where they're coming from so that I can treat them in a way that they find productive and helpful, right? So treat people the way they want to be treated as opposed to other ways of engaging with folks, right? And so with those agreements and ground rules, that kind of leads us into part of the purpose of our conversation. And part of it is this membership drive that we are undertaking, right? So community mediation, community resolution, Minnesota is really focused on this membership drive. And to be a member, it only costs $60 for a year, right? And so when we think about all of the opportunities to learn and grow and get mentorship, that price is pretty low. Right, it's pretty low. It's a reasonable cost. We also recognize, like, what are some of the membership benefits? What are the benefits of membership? Well, first, you get reduced prices on all of our trainings and conferences. You have access to live webinars like this one, and you have an opportunity to be mentored and coached by our board members, right? So membership does have its privileges. So if you want to join, recognize that we have that $60 annual membership fee. There are also scholarships available for students or community members. So we want to make sure that everyone has access to this great resource. We also want to let you know that this is an opportunity. This is a community, and so if you've enjoyed what we've created, if you've enjoyed our services, this is an excellent time to engage with other folks and invite folks into this community. So yeah, don't want to lose sight of our membership drive. So thank you so much for being a member and encouraging others to join such a wonderful organization. So with that, I do want to kind of get into the meat of our conversation today, and we're going to talk a little bit about this notion of context behaviors, right? So context drives our behaviors. So let's say I'm at Orchestra Hall, and there's a song that they're playing. There's a musical rendition that they're playing, and I am so moved by the music that they're playing. I'm moved by the mood that they've created, and so with all of this emotion that is building up, I stand up and I say, "Yeah, woohoo!" Right? Orchestra Hall, right? What would you say about my behavior? What might people say about that behavior? They might say that behavior is extreme. They might say that behavior is inappropriate for the context, right? And so how would the people around me, look, they'd be like, "Oh my goodness, what's wrong with this guy?" No, right? So why? Because my behavior is not congruent or consistent with that context, right? And maybe I didn't know that ahead of time. But folks they have ushers and other folks that will remind me or tell me or inform me, educate me about the behavior in that context. And so when we think about behaviors, they are oftentimes they're driven by the context that we're in, and so we have to understand what is the context. So I have these parties that are in conflict with one another. What's the overall context, right? So that I can get a better sense of how not only can I respond, but how they may be responding to one another. We also have to get beyond this kind of good and bad thing and really focus on what I like to spend time on, which is being effective, right? So all of these plants need very similar things. They need water, they need sunlight, they need growing medium. However, they need them in very different ways, right? And so an effective leader recognizes that I need to give these plants what they need as opposed to what I want to give them, right? And so oftentimes what happens is, and we'll see it in conflict situations where people go directly to this good and bad thing as opposed to thinking about how effective that behavior was, right? So I remember doing some mediations where I was representing a store, right? So I am the injured party on behalf of the store. And so oftentimes I would have young people who I'm mediating with, and I'd ask them, did you get what you wanted, right, from this thing? And or they'll come into mediation saying, well, I made a bad choice, right? That the young people would say this, and I would just smile and I'd say, you know what? I don't know if it was a good choice or a bad choice. I don't know if it was a good choice or a bad choice. And then they look at me kind of puzzled, like, I'm not sure what does that mean? And I said, well, let's think about whether it was a good choice or a bad choice. So did you get what you wanted out of stealing from that store? And their first response is obviously, well, yeah, I stole the thing. I wanted to get it, right? And then we probe a little deeper, and I was like, okay, so it was part of your plan for your mom to have to take off from work and pick you up from the police station. It was part of your plan for your dad to have to take off from work to come and sit in this mediation. It was part of your plan that you would lose access to the car or your phone or electronics. So that was all part of your grand plan, right? And then after we go down this road, most often kids would say, no, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't a part of my plan. And I guess it was ineffective for getting me what I wanted. Every now and then you run into that kid who's like, yeah, it got me exactly what I want, right? And you deal with them differently, but not in this session, right? So this notion, we have to get beyond this good and bad thing and think about what is effective behavior and what is ineffective behavior, right? So, you know, I have a couple in front of me. I'm doing a mediation, and, you know, I ask, you know, was yelling at your partner, yelling at your spouse, was that effective or ineffective? Well, I got him to do what I wanted. Okay, how often do you think that's going to work? Right. So talking about effective and ineffective behaviors as opposed to good behaviors and bad behaviors, right? So we take the moral whatever stuff out of it and actually start looking at what I can do something about, right? So I can feel bad all day. That doesn't compel me necessarily to do something about it. Oftentimes it can be a fuel for that. But when I think about my behavior being effective or ineffective, those are places where I can see dramatic opportunities for change, right? So we need to make those shifts. We also need to recognize that oftentimes conflict is less about two, you know, opposing forces, but actually two forces that are actually trying to do the same things, but have different methods, right? They have different methods for achieving those things. So as an example, when we went over those ground rules, there's this image of these two people, and they are in conflict, but they're trying to do the same thing. It is just that where they come from, they have two different perspectives. They have different positions, right? They have different approaches, but they're actually trying to do the same thing, which is communicate, right? They're trying to communicate. And so when we think about these differing methods, what is it that people are trying to do? They are oftentimes seeking significance, belonging, and safety, but it is their methods that become problematic, not necessarily the fact that they are opposing each other, right? The opposition that presents itself is actually an illusion, but that's a discussion for a whole nother topic. A whole nother time. So when we also, the other thing that I wanted to think about in terms of becoming more effective mediators, navigators of conflict, is this notion of engagement, right? So how do you keep people engaged because conflict is tough, right? Lots of people avoid conflict at all costs, right? I will give you whatever as long as we don't have to come into conflict. So how do you keep people engaged? Well, you keep people engaged by recognizing what are those common things. Right? Why are they coming together? What is the relation? How much is the relation? What's the worth of the relationship? Right? So if you have partners who are coming in to this conflict to have a discussion, before we go further into this, what does this relationship mean to you? Right? If we have neighbors, right? You're not moving. We have to live together. So how do we do that? How do we engage with each other around making sure that we get safety, significance, and belonging, right? How do we engage with one another, right? When you have parties that are in conflict, what is your relationship? And then why would you engage to make sure that you keep this relationship, or you're forced into having a relationship, right? In the case of neighbors, right? So it's important to recognize you keep people engaged by addressing significance, belonging, and safety as those core values, and that's what keeps us engaged. And so when we think about that, we also want to be mindful that it's important for us to align our intentions, our values, our goals with our behavior, right? So it's important that those things are aligned. So I was in a conversation with someone and they said, you know, we have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And they said it. So I chimed in and I said, well, that's one way you could say that. Here's another way you might want to bring about that point. And once I said that, what did the person say? What do you think they said once I brought that to their attention? I did not intend to say that. I don't know where that came from. That's not like me. And so I heard that and I believed them, right? My follow-up question was, then what did you intend by that statement? And they were like, I don't know. And I believe them. I believe that they did not know why they said that, because it was mindless, right? It was a mindless comment as opposed to being a mindful comment, right? So when we align our intentions, when we align our values, we align our goals with our behaviors, then we become mindful as opposed to mindless, right? And so when we think about this notion of coming into conflict, being a navigator of conflict, being a guide through conflict, it becomes important for us to be mindful of our hot buttons, to be mindful of our words so that they are congruent with our values and with our goals and with our behaviors. Otherwise, we become mindless as opposed to mindful, right? And so this is the opportunity that we typically take to sit down and talk with folks, to walk through scenarios and whatnot. And so I'm going to encourage you to meet me on the website to engage in this conversation. So go into the email section, and if you have questions, comments, observations, please put them there, and I will address them. The next part that I just want to share is next week's session. And so next week's session, we'll start to talk about what tools can we use to make sure that we are aligning our intentions, our values, our behaviors, and our goals. How do we keep those things in line, right? And we'll use Johari's window to kind of talk about that. Again, I want to take a step back and go and just remind you again that this is part of our membership drive, and you know, some of the benefits of membership are access to our training conferences. You get discounted rates. You have access to live webinars just like this one. You have the opportunity to be mentored and coached through some of our board members, and you have the opportunity to connect with other professionals that are making community mediation and restorative justice a part of our everyday lives. And so with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. Again, my name is Andre Koen. I want to say again, thank you. You could be any place on the planet doing anything else, but you spent time with us, and I appreciate that. So thank you so much. And again, we'll see you next week as we start to talk about Johari's window. And this has been our time in the Mediator Cafe. All right, this is Andre Koen. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.